match. Austin Collins on your left, a blank name on your right that will be filled in momentarily, I'm sure.
I think these are pretty close to the same list here. Two Snapcaster Mages, no Terramanders in these lists.
Ryan Overturf, our colleague here this weekend and Liz's teammate in that win earlier this year, would like everyone to know that Liz is playing with Ryan's cards.
Okay.
Because that's super important. Thanks, Ryan.
It's important to know who owns the property.
A thought scour here from Austin Collins. A Steam Vent's tapped, and we head back over to Lynn in just a moment. First an opt. And now they draw. Breeding Pool untapped. So one thing that Ryan did with his build of Is It Phoenix, because he was actually Teamer Phoenix at the Team Constructed Open that they won. Splashing for Traverse the Uvenwald and Life Goes On in the sideboard, as now here come 2 copies of Arclight Phoenix in the graveyard.
Cool draw.
Super cool. Now you're not going to find Traverse the Uvenwald here this week, and Ryan actually has commented that he just doesn't believe that Traverse the Uvenwald is the right thing to be doing right now in the format. So the green splash from that breeding pool is mostly just in the sideboard for copies of Life Goes On.
Right. You get flashback on Ancient Grudge, and you don't necessarily have to fetch the breeding pool to enable those cards, since you have Manamorphose to generate green in those edge cases. I'm not the biggest fan of Life Goes On, but some people do play it to improve the burn matchup.
Spire Bluff Canal untapped. And now there's a sleight of hand. One in hand, one at the bottom. We go back over to Liz now. Spire Bluff Canal there. Now here's a Manamorphose, draw a card. There's a Manamorphose, draw a card. There's a Thought Scour. 1, 2. Surgical Extraction thing in the ice, go to the graveyard.
The Austin Collins rocking back and forth sped up is kind of an experience.
I didn't really notice.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of the sort of mechanics that we're used to sped up, but if you take the lens back a little bit, it's interesting.
Austin trying to get cozy in that chair. There's Manamorphose.
And Surgical is theoretically a path if you can get the Arclight Phoenixes off the battlefield. You can see Austin, there's some hesitation to do stuff on your own turn to kill the Phoenixes because you don't want Lynn to just go to her own turn, play some spells, and get everything back. So if you have to interact with the battlefield and as you're going about your cantripping for efficiency purposes, then you risk the Phoenixes coming back. But if you have a Surgical Extraction to put everything together, then maybe you can answer the Arclight Phoenixes for good.
There's a Lightning Axe. Now there's a Snapcaster Mage. This might be another Lightning Axe. All right. Snapcaster Mage down, get back a Phoenix. In for 3. All right. The Lightning Axe is going to go. That was actually a Lightning Bolt. I think that just went upstairs. Snapcaster Mage. Surgical Extraction is going to take care of the Lightning Bolt, which means that Austin Collins gets to keep playing at a very low 1 life.
Yeah, but the issue here is, I think Collins was hoping to be able to save the Surgical Extraction there for the Arclight Phoenixes. Now Lynn maybe has an opportunity the following turn if, you can look, there's a Lightning Axe plus a Serum Vision. Plenty of opportunity next turn to be able to find a missing cantrip or removal spell or whatever and get the Arclight Phoenix back on the battlefield for lethal.
Here's a Faithless Looting. Draw 2 and discard 2.
And there's the tap out.
It'll be a win. Game number 1 here for Lynn, up a game over Austin Collins. Is it Phoenix Mirror, pardon me, goes to our player on the right to kick things off. Now, I know some players at home are going to want to see some more diversity in the matchups that we do show here, and we're going to try. But as Nick Miller has told us very early on here when he was talking to the 26 of 32 players on our leaderboard that have attended here in Philadelphia, a lot of them are playing Is It Phoenix, and as we continue to watch the deck, I think it's a pretty good reason. It's a really good deck.
And it's really hard. I think a big part of it is it's really hard to beat it on one line.
Yep.
You know, when you watch Dredge, and it can do incredibly powerful stuff, it's very hard to interact with, especially game 1. But post-board, you know, someone has a Leyline of the Void, someone has a Rest in Peace, someone has Tormod's Crypt backed up by a clock, whatever. That's good enough. And against Is It Phoenix, if their draw is humming, it's not going to be one thing. You're not going to beat them with one sweeper. You're not going to beat them by exiling the graveyard one time. You kind of have to beat them on a bunch of different fronts. And it's really hard to do that in a short timeline, especially against a deck that just draws a bunch of extra cards. You know, it finds the same draw over and over again. It can reload in the event that you hit it with a card that's meaningful. And that all adds up. On top of the deck just being really explosive and powerful when it's doing its thing.
All right, we are underway here in game number 2. Austin Collins going to start things off with the Serum Visions. One on top, one on the bottom. Split the difference on the scry. Liz going to just a Spire Bluff Canal. It's a thing in the ice there for Collins.
It's really rare to have a deck like this that's, you know, ostensibly linear and aggressive and feel like the deck gets better after sideboarding. That's really rare in Modern. The history here is that, you know, you have good game 1s and then post-board your opponent has cards that matter. And I feel like with the counter spells and the removal and the extra surgicals or the blood moons, their cards are better than the cards their opponent is bringing to the table.
It feels that way a lot of the time. I'm discarding Surgical Extraction there with the Lightning Axe. And now there is a Surgical Extraction. I think going after, wow, geez. So Surgicals are going to go back and forth here. So it was an attempt to Surgical Thing in the Ice by Lynn, and Austin said, actually, I'll Surgical my own Thing in the Ice from the graveyard so you can't take the one that was in my hand and the rest that are in my deck. Don't see that exchange very often. Now here's a Thing in the Ice for,
for Liz. And that happening there because Collins had another one in hand. I don't think you would pick a fight that extreme if you didn't already have one in hand.
This is crazy. Well, maybe he had 2 in hand.
Sure.
Because there's another Thing in the Ice. A Polluted Delta, and we'll head back over to Lynn. There's things in the ice everywhere. Here's an Opt. Top card becomes the bottom one there for Liz. Scalding Tarn, pass the turn. Polluted Delta will be sacrificed. Looks like Liz play a Snapcaster Mage and Lightning Axe. One of these things in the ice with that fetch on the stack. So now Collins will get to resolve his fetch, searching up a Steam Vents tapped. That's a Manamorphose, down to 3 ice counters. Pyromancer Ascension in hand now.
The backup matchup that I watched earlier, Tarek Patel had Pyromancer's Ascension in the mirror match, and it was unbeatable. They can't get enchantments off the battlefield. It's really hard to get a foot forward in the matchup because everything just kind of dies and trades. And then Patel almost comboed off. Like, he almost drew his whole deck and made 1,000,000 mana in the game in question. Because Manamorphose was just chaining along.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thing the Ice is transformed into Awoken Horror, so it's an attack here for 7. Wouldn't be surprised if Austin can transform his Thing in the Ice this turn.
But from Lynn's position, she kind of got to get aggressive here because Pyromancer's Ascension takes 1, maybe 2 turns to take over. So you got to end this game quickly.
All right, there's Manamorphose. Ascension with 1 counter, Thing in the Ice, down to 2.
Is Singing the Ice a horror on the front side?
It is.
Not like an ice cube or whatever. Just confirming what gets bounced and what doesn't.
Creature type ice cube.
Yeah, creature dash cube.
Yes. Faithless Lootings have been surgicaled away. Yeah, so there's some weird counterplay with Awoken Horror being on the battlefield against itself, basically. There's Serum Visions. We'll go back over to Collins. Do apologize for the lack of a life total update there on Austin's side. There's a Crackling Drake. Looks like a small technological error on our end that we do apologize for. You have to imagine this Crackling Drake is pretty big, and well, Liz has one of her own.
The battlefield getting a little gummed up here is not great for Liz. Again, I think she's got to get this one done with as fast as possible. Because any spell from Collins, and he might draw his whole deck.
Well, this is a deck that plays quite a few spells. Serum Visions is the play here. Draw 1, scry 2, draw 1, scry 2. Get to do it twice because Pyromancer Ascension is online. All right. Next up is Faithless Looting twice. Draw 2. Discard 2, including Arclight Phoenixes. Draw 2. We'll see him discard 2 here in just a moment. But this is a card here in Pyromancer Ascension that Eli Cassis, a former Invitational champion here on the SCG Tour, was able to use to great benefit when he won Grand Prix Oakland earlier this year, if memory does serve correctly. Looks like there are 3 Arclight Phoenixes, just 2, pardon me, in the graveyard. There's like, let's make it 3. I was a little ahead of myself. 2 Lightning Axes. 1 on the Crackling Drake, 1 on the Thing in the Ice. Yeah, I guess out of all the cards that are on the battlefield, the best of the bunch is the Red Enchantment.
Yeah, you need about 1 unchecked turn there. Although it looks like Lynn here with another Surgical Extraction to perhaps play another turn or 2.
Lightning Axe quietly becoming one of the better cards in this format, too.
Kills everything. Another way to get Phoenix in the graveyard. Not like the deck needs to make all that many land drops, so you have cards to spare most of the time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You just have no shortage of cards to just throw away. And some of them you actively want to throw away. Here's a Serum Visions. But only 1 for Liz due to the lack of a Pyromancer's Ascension.
Yeah, and for as good as that last turn was for Collins, the subsequent turns are going to be even better.
Yeah, and that turn was really good. There's Snapcaster Mage into Opt. Top card becomes the bottom one. Serum Visions. So all this cantripping. And just simply going to pass the turn back. Will Liz Lynn over to Austin Collins. Time to flashback a Faithless Looting. Draw 2, discard 2. We're going to do that twice. And Liz Lynn is going to concede the game knowing that Pyromancer Ascension is too much to overcome.
Yep. Just gives you about a turn or 2 to play. And if you can't win the game in a turn or 2, that's it.
And oddly, they both just have 1 in their main deck. And then I see Lynn with 1 in the sideboard and Austin?
Does not.
Okay.
So where are the points of differentiation in the board here? Let's see. Looks like two Abrades for Collins versus a Flame Slash, and both have a Shadow Storm, both have a Ravenous Trap. 2 Dispel, 2 Spell Pierce. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same stuff. Looks like Collins has a Dragon's Claw that Liz doesn't.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's, you know.
Rawr! That's my dragon. I know Michael Burnett had 2 Dragon's Claws in his sideboard at Grand Prix Los Angeles a few weeks ago when he won that tournament. So Dragon's Claw is actually starting to pick up a little bit of steam, something I didn't think I'd hear, unless Burn was like the best deck in the format.
So I personally think Dragon's Claw is the card that you want. The matchup gets played on such a tight timeline that you rarely have the luxury of getting the breeding pool tapped. So once you're playing a breeding pool untapped, what are you really doing?
This is in reference to Life Goes On.
Yeah, versus Dragon's Claw.
All right, thing in the ice.
I also think Dragon's Claw is just the more powerful card of the bunch.
Okay. I'm willing to buy that. I mean, the deck does have a lot of red spells.
If you have a Dragon's Claw on turn 2 and they can't kill it, like, that's kind of the whole game. Whereas one copy of Life Goes On is certainly good, don't get me wrong, but it's not like that's just game over. But the other side of it is you can draw Life Goes On at any stage of the game and have it do something, whereas Dragon's Claw, if it's, you're already on the ropes and you draw it, it's not good.
All right, the exchange there was a thing in the ice on turn 2 by Liz Lynn. Austin Collins plays Manamorphose into a Sleight of Hand, into a Flame Slash, and now in Liz Lynn's draw step, Surgical Extraction targeting thing in the ice. And it looks like it will resolve. So, Liz Lynn is going to have to get this game done with some combination of Lightning Bolts and Arclight Phoenixes and perhaps Snapcaster Mage and Crackling Drake. So enough win conditions, probably.
And that's an interesting play there from Lynn. You can see, even though she had a thing in the ice in her hand there and may have wanted to protect it, the fact that she has Arclight Phoenix plus a way to get into the graveyard, she wants to keep the Surgical Extraction as a third spell to play this turn to get at least one Arclight Phoenix going.
It'll be a Serum Visions now. And simply passing the turn. Faithless Looting. Draw 2.
Now Collins has to play with the knowledge that Lynn has access to Surgical Extraction.
At least one Arclight Phoenix in the graveyard now here for Austin. Spire Bluff Canal and just going to pass the turn. So we head back over to Liz Lynn. Faithless Looting. Draw 2. Arclight Phoenix and Crackling Drake go to the graveyard. Scalding Tarn will be sacrificed now, as that's the third land drop. There's an island. That's an opt. Top card becomes the bottom one, maybe, from the scry. Yes, it does. So new card coming. And now there's Surgical Extraction. Going after Arclight Phoenixes. And Austin has Surgical Extraction in his hand that he could have protected them with, but elected not to. You see Austin's hand, a couple of lands, a Surgical Extraction, and a Crackling Drake. So the goal for Austin now is to win the game, at least in the short term, with Crackling Drake being huge.
And with the Surgical Extraction, I think, being cover for Lynn's Arclight Phoenixes rather than a way to protect his own.
Uh-huh. So here's Surgical Extraction. It gets dispelled. Okay. So here's an attack for 3. Pass the turn back. Collins will draw, play that Delta, sack that Delta. This mirror match is crazy. Basic Island. We'll see a Crackling Drake here in just a moment, I'm sure.
And both players had stuff to do, so actually Pyromancer's Ascension in this spot might not be that good of a draw.
Here's a Looting, which is always a good draw. Discard 2 cards, pass the turn back. Collins will draw. He'll flashback Faithless Looting. So many times do we see this card played in this mirror match. Discard 2 lands. Make sure there's always good cards in hand. There's a Serum Vision. Draw, scry 2. Looks like they'll head to the bottom. Crackling Drake, hiya. Serum Vision, draw, scry 2, both go to the bottom. Steam Vents tap, pass turn. Beacon Bolt's going to take care of Arclight Phoenix, and Crackling Drake will take care of Lynn. Austin.